What if I told you the greatest enemy in your life isn't money, stress, or even failure? It's confusion, the fog that keeps you spinning, drowning, never moving forward. And here's the shocking part: you could clear that fog in one single sentence. Write it down, and half the battle is already won. But most people never do. They avoid it. They hide. And in the end, their silence costs them everything: their health, their relationships, their dreams. In this video, I'm going to show you why writing your problem is not just therapy, it's survival. Why it is the torch that cuts through the darkness and the weapon that turns weakness into power. Stay with me until the end, because if you do, I promise you'll walk away with the one tool that could change the rest of your life. Life rarely breaks us in one dramatic blow. It wears us down slowly, quietly, like a fog that creeps in at night and swallows the road beneath our feet. Think about your own life. How many times have you felt stuck? Not because you are lazy, not because you lack talent, but because everything felt heavy, messy, complicated. Bills stacked on the counter, emails flooding the inbox, a boss who piles on more work than you can carry, a relationship that feels like walking on broken glass, the health habits you promised yourself you'd start, but never did. Each problem feels small on its own, but together, they create a storm, and you stand there in the middle of it, frozen, not knowing where to begin. Here is the thing: the weight of confusion is heavier than the weight of any single problem. Confusion is the enemy. It paralyzes. It blinds. And most people spend their lives inside it. Why? Because they never stop to name what they are fighting. Think about war. No general ever won by saying, "We are fighting something, somewhere, somehow." They win because they define the battlefield. They mark the enemy's position. They give the chaos shape. But in life, most people never define their battlefield. They wake up, stumble through the day, and call it survival. They tell themselves, "I'll figure it out tomorrow." And tomorrow looks exactly like yesterday. Let me give you a workplace example. Imagine an employee named Sarah. She's drowning in meetings, tasks, and Slack messages. Every day she feels busy, but nothing gets finished. Her performance review comes back average, even though she works late nights. She thinks the problem is that she isn't working hard enough. But that's an illusion. The real problem? She has never once stopped to write down what the true bottleneck is. She never asked, what is the single obstacle that keeps repeating every week? So the fog thickens, and her frustration grows. Now look at personal life. A man named David keeps arguing with his partner. The same fights over and over. Money, time, priorities. They circle around each other like boxers, throwing the same punches, never landing a knockout. David tells his friends, "We just can't get along." But is that the problem? Or is the real problem that both of them have never sat down and written, in plain words, what they actually want from the relationship? They live in fog, and fog destroys intimacy. History repeats the same lesson. Napoleon, one of the most brilliant strategists in history, marched into Russia thinking sheer willpower could conquer winter. But he never clearly defined the real problem: supply lines. His men froze and starved because the obvious was ignored. Clarity could have saved an empire, but pride kept him blind. Do you see the pattern? It is not the size of the problem that breaks people. It is the failure to define it. Confusion is a silent killer. It destroys careers. It poisons families. It even topples nations. And here is the dangerous part. Most people learn to live inside the fog. They normalize it. They convince themselves that constant stress is just how life works. They say things like, "That's adulthood. That's marriage. That's just how business goes." But that is a lie that keeps them weak, because clarity is power, and power comes from naming what you are truly facing. Let me make this personal. Think of the last time you had a restless night of sleep. You tossed and turned, replaying conversations in your head. You imagined worst-case scenarios. You woke up drained, not rested. But the moment you finally told someone the problem, the moment you said it out loud or scribbled it on paper, didn't you feel lighter? Even before the problem was solved? That feeling is not magic. It is the weight of confusion leaving your body. It is fog lifting from the battlefield. Suddenly, you can see the enemy. And when you see the enemy, you can fight. But most people never take that step. They keep everything locked in their heads. Their mind becomes a prison, overcrowded with thoughts that never slow down. And like prisoners, they pace back and forth in their own skull, never breaking free. You know who understood this? Marcus Aurelius, one of the greatest Roman emperors carrying the weight of an empire. He faced betrayal, war, and plague, yet he wrote daily in his private journal. Why? To name the chaos, to give shape to the fog. Those writings became his Meditations, a book that still guides us 2,000 years later. Imagine if he had kept it all in his head. History might have forgotten him, and he was not alone. Thomas Edison filled entire notebooks, not just with inventions, but with problems he was trying to crack. Abraham Lincoln wrote and rewrote speeches long before delivering them because he knew that writing forced clarity. Even modern leaders like Warren Buffett say, if you cannot write it down, you do not understand it. So ask yourself this: how many problems are you carrying right now unsolved simply because you have not named them? Your financial struggles, your health, your relationships, your career. Are they really impossible? Or are they just undefined? Here is the uncomfortable truth. If you cannot describe your problem clearly, you do not yet understand it. And if you do not understand it, how can you ever solve it? People fear this step because clarity is painful. Writing down the problem forces honesty. It strips away excuses. It exposes the truth you have been avoiding. That the marriage is dying. That the job is suffocating you. That the debt is out of control. That your habits are chains you willingly wear. Clarity hurts, but confusion kills. So we arrive here, standing inside the fog. The problem is not that life is impossible. The problem is that you are carrying a storm in your head instead of laying it bare before you. And that right there is why most people never change. Not because they cannot, but because they refuse to see clearly. In the next section, we are going to break this open. We are going to talk about what happens when you finally put pen to paper, when you name the monster in the dark, and why doing so is not just a trick but a weapon. The fog is real, but so is the torch. And the torch is in your hand. What if I told you the solution is simpler than you think? Not easy, not painless, but simple. It begins with this. If you can write the problem down clearly, you are already halfway to solving it. Kidlin's law. 5 words that sound almost too obvious, but obvious truths are the ones we ignore most. Think about it. When was the last time you sat down, pen in hand, and wrote, "This is my problem"? Not a vague cloud of stress, not an endless spiral of worry, but one clean sentence that nails it to the wall. Most people never do it. They stay in fog. And fog feels safe, because clarity demands courage. Let's break this down. Why does writing down a problem matter so much? Because the human brain is a master of distortion. Thoughts swirl, collide, expand. A single worry multiplies into 10. Your mind becomes a hall of mirrors, reflecting fear back at itself. But the moment you write it down, the distortion collapses. The monster shrinks. The fog clears. You realize, this is the thing I must face. Psychologists have proven this. Cognitive behavioral therapy often begins with one simple task: write down the thought. Not just think it, not just talk about it, write it. Because the act of writing forces precision, and precision kills anxiety. Here is an example. Imagine a manager named Alex. He feels overwhelmed at work. He tells himself, everything is falling apart. That sentence alone is enough to drown him. But when he finally writes it out, it looks like this. I don't have a system to track deadlines, so projects keep slipping. Now the fog has a shape. The problem is not everything. The problem is one missing system, and that is something he can fix. Clarity is a scalpel. It cuts the tumor out of the mess. History confirms it. Leonardo da Vinci filled journals with sketches and questions. Half of them were problems he could not solve yet, but writing them made the impossible concrete. It turned wonder into investigation, and investigation into invention. Think of Winston Churchill. During World War II, when London burned under German bombs, he spent nights drafting speeches. Line by line, word by word. He did not trust his mind to carry the weight of an empire. He put it on paper. And his words became the spine of British courage. Here is the deeper truth. Clarity is not just about solving problems. It is about reclaiming power. When you write the problem, you stop being its victim. You become its witness. You stand outside the chaos and point at it, and the act of pointing is already an act of control. But notice something else. When you avoid writing, you stay entangled. You become one with the fog. And when you are one with the fog, you cannot escape it. This is why most people avoid clarity. Because it exposes them. It leaves no place to hide. Let's say your problem is debt. In your head, it feels like a vague nightmare. But if you sit down and write, I owe $14,320 on credit cards, and the interest rate is 22%. Suddenly, there it is. Naked, numbers on paper. Cold, real. And in that moment, you feel two things at once. Fear and power. Fear, because now you cannot pretend anymore. Power, because now you can calculate, plan, attack. That is the paradox. Clarity hurts, but clarity heals. Look back at your own life. When did you finally make a decision that changed everything? It was not when you had all the answers. It was when you finally named the truth. I hate this job. This relationship is toxic. I cannot keep living like this. The sentence comes first. The solution comes after. This is why Marcus Aurelius wrote. Why Epictetus taught his students to name their impressions. Why modern psychology insists on journaling. Not because words are decoration, but because words are weapons. Here is the metaphor you need to remember. Imagine you are in a dark cave holding a torch. The torch does not destroy the cave. It simply reveals the walls. And once you see the walls, you can find the exit. Writing is that torch. It does not magically solve the problem, but it shows you the shape of the trap, and that is half the battle. Now let me ask you, what would happen if you sat down tonight and wrote your single biggest problem in one sentence? Not excuses, not stories, not self-pity, one sharp sentence. Would it scare you? Yes. Would it liberate you? Also yes. Because the truth is this. People do not fear problems. They fear clarity. They fear what happens when excuses collapse. They fear the raw edge of reality staring back at them. But here is the awakening. Reality is always kinder than illusion. Always. Illusion drags you for years. Reality punches you once, then gives you a path forward. That is the revelation. That is why Kidlin's law is not just a clever saying, it is a survival strategy. It is the turning point between weakness and strength. So in this moment, I want you to pause. Think of one problem you carry right now. Maybe it is financial. Maybe it is your health. Maybe it is your marriage, your career, or the silent weight you never tell anyone. Now imagine it written in front of you. On paper, in ink, clear, defined, not swirling in your mind, but pinned to the page like an insect under glass. That picture is your freedom, because once it is written, you can begin. And beginning is everything. In the next section, we will talk about how to move from clarity into transformation, how to take that written problem and turn it into action, into momentum, into power. But for now, remember this. The fog is not eternal. The torch is in your hand. And clarity is the fire that never dies. Clarity without action is a cruel trick. It shows you the truth, then abandons you in front of it. That is why most people stop after section 2 in their own lives. They write something down, they feel lighter, they even taste a little relief. But relief is not transformation. Transformation begins when you pick up the words you wrote and ask the next question. What do I do about it? This is where philosophy becomes practical. This is where psychology becomes a weapon. This is where your life actually begins to change. Let me show you how. Start with something brutally simple. Take the problem you wrote and break it into pieces. Let's say you wrote, I am drowning in debt. Fine, that is the truth. But now ask, what are the 5 actions that could shift this problem? It might look like this. Call the credit card company and negotiate a lower interest rate. Cancel subscriptions I do not use. Create a side hustle for extra cash. Build a repayment calendar. Cut dining out for 90 days. Suddenly, the mountain shrinks. It is no longer one giant nightmare. It is 5 specific actions. And the moment you write actions, you are already moving from victim to fighter. The human brain loves lists because lists turn chaos into order. That is why generals map battles. That is why CEOs build roadmaps. That is why Marcus Aurelius reminded himself daily, life is not unbearable if you break it into tasks. Picture an overwhelmed team at a tech company. They are missing deadlines, burning out, fighting in meetings. Everyone complains, the workload is impossible. But then one manager forces the team to write every project on a whiteboard. In 2 hours, the fog lifts. They realize half the projects are duplicated. A quarter are low-value distractions, and the real priority is hidden at the bottom of the list. One afternoon of writing and sorting did more than months of meetings. Because when the problem is visible, action becomes obvious. You have heard people say, keep a journal, but do not think of it as a diary of feelings. Think of it as a laboratory. Every night, write one problem. Every morning, read it again and ask, what is the next action? Over time, the notebook becomes a map of your transformation. You can flip back and see how yesterday's impossible problem became today's solved memory. That builds confidence. And confidence fuels momentum. This is what the Stoics practiced. They called it premeditatio malorum, premeditation of evils. They wrote about potential problems so they would never be caught off guard. It was not complaining. It was training. Think of writing as forging a blade. The first stroke is naming the problem. The second stroke is cutting it into pieces. The third stroke is carving an action plan. Every time you return to the page, the blade gets sharper, and with each cut, the problem bleeds less power over you. Steve Jobs used whiteboards not for decoration, but as battle maps. He once filled an entire board with product ideas, then slashed them down to 3. That discipline writing, then cutting, created the focus that built Apple. Oprah Winfrey has spoken about journaling her struggles when she was young. Not just writing dreams, but naming hardships. She credits those pages with turning pain into fuel. Even generals like Dwight Eisenhower practiced clarity. He had a method called the Eisenhower Matrix. Write tasks in 4 boxes: urgent, not urgent, important, not important. That one tool guided military campaigns and later shaped how presidents manage crises. What do these figures share? They did not trust memory. They trusted writing. And they trusted the discipline of turning words into plans. Now let's go deeper. Not all problems are financial or professional. Some cut into the soul. What do you do when the problem you write is, I feel empty, or I hate my marriage, or I don't know who I am? These are not problems you solve with a budget sheet or a calendar. These are problems that demand courage. Here is the practice. You still write them. You still give them shape. Then you ask, what is the smallest action that respects this truth? I feel empty might become, I will call a therapist tomorrow. Or, I will sign up for a class that excites me. I hate my marriage might become, I will initiate one honest conversation this week without defensiveness. I don't know who I am might become, I will write 3 pages every morning about what I actually want without judgment. These actions will not solve the problem in a day, but they start the transformation. And transformation is not one giant leap. It is one clear step repeated until the fog thins. Imagine an employee named Ravi. He feels invisible at work. No recognition, no promotions, no spark. In his head, the story is, my career is doomed. But then he writes it down. The problem becomes, I have not shown my boss concrete results in 6 months. Now he has a target. So he creates a plan. Track achievements weekly, send a progress summary every Friday, request a one-on-one meeting monthly. 3 small actions. 6 months later, his boss praises his initiative. Promotion follows. From fog to clarity. From clarity to transformation. Dependence is waiting for someone else to solve it. Freedom is picking up the pen. Dependence is saying, it's too much, I can't. Freedom is saying, this is the problem, and here is my next step. That is why the act of writing is not passive. It is rebellion. It is you refusing to drown in the fog. It is you planting your flag in the ground and saying, this is mine to fight. Let's be brutally honest. Every day you delay writing the problem, it grows. Unwritten problems metastasize. Ignored problems mutate into crises. Companies collapse because leaders did not write down the obvious. Families break because no one had the courage to write. We are drifting apart. Individuals waste decades because they never sat down with pen and paper to confront their own emptiness. Writing is not busy work. It is survival. So here we are. The practice is clear. Write it down, break it down, turn it into steps, and begin. You will not feel ready. You will not feel strong. But strength is not the starting line. It is the reward at the finish. Transformation is waiting on the other side of the page. In the next section, we will go darker. We will explore what happens when you refuse to face problems. The cost of avoidance. The slow death that comes from never picking up the pen. But before that, I want you to hold this image. Your problem is a fog. Your pen is the torch. Your plan is the blade. And you are the one holding all of it. Let's face the brutal truth. Avoidance is not harmless. Avoidance is poison. Every time you refuse to name your problem, the problem grows teeth. It digs into you. It feeds on your silence. And while you distract yourself with work, entertainment, or excuses, it keeps growing in the dark. People believe that if they don't look at a problem, it will somehow shrink. But life does not work like that. Unwritten problems metastasize. Ignored problems mutate. The debt becomes bankruptcy. The tension becomes divorce. The stress becomes illness. The fog becomes a storm that devours everything. Think about health. A man ignores the creeping pain in his chest. He tells himself, it's probably nothing. I'll deal with it later. But he never writes it down, never books the appointment, never confronts the truth. Years later, the silence explodes into a heart attack. Think about relationships. A couple fights about small things. Every week the arguments repeat, but neither partner writes the real problem. We are growing apart. They avoid the sentence, and because they avoid it, the rot spreads quietly. By the time they admit it, love has already died. Avoidance is not delay. Avoidance is decay. Companies collapse the same way. Blockbuster had early signs. Customers drifting toward streaming. Technology shifting under their feet. But executives never wrote the real problem. Our business model is dying. Instead, they lived in fog. They kept telling themselves, DVDs still make money. And Netflix, the company that named the problem clearly, destroyed them. Kodak invented the digital camera, but they avoided the sentence, if film dies, so does our empire. They refused clarity, and their empire crumbled into dust. Do you see the pattern? Avoidance always feels safe in the short term, but in the long term, it kills. Look at nations. The Roman Empire rotted from within. Leaders ignored corruption, laziness, and moral decay. The problems were visible, but no one named them with urgency. By the time the truth was undeniable, it was too late. An empire that lasted centuries collapsed under its own weight. Even great leaders fall. King Louis XVI of France ignored the debt crisis and the hunger of his people. The problem was written in bread riots across Paris. But he avoided clarity. He drowned in distraction, ceremony, and denial. The cost was not just his crown. The cost was his head. History does not forgive avoidance. Why do people avoid? Because truth is sharp, and sharp things cut. Writing down, I am failing as a leader feels unbearable. Writing, I am destroying my health feels humiliating. Writing, I am stuck in a loveless marriage feels terrifying. So people tell themselves, I'll deal with it later. Later becomes never, and never becomes collapse. Avoidance pretends to protect your heart, but in reality, it chains your hands. It leaves you helpless while the problem grows stronger. Think of the person who ignores financial problems. They avoid looking at bank statements. They swipe the card and hope it goes through. They joke about being broke but never sit down to count the numbers. Then one day the lights go out. The landlord locks the door. And the small problems they refuse to write became a life-altering catastrophe. Think of the worker who hates his job but refuses to admit it. He tells himself, "It's fine. It pays the bills." 10 years pass. His soul withers. He becomes bitter, resentful, lifeless. And then one day, he realizes the truth too late. He traded his life for safety, not meaning. Avoidance is not neutral. It robs you of time, the one currency you never get back. Dependence is waiting for someone else to rescue you. Dependence says, if I ignore it long enough, maybe it will go away. But problems do not go away. They wait. And the longer you wait, the more power they gain. Freedom, on the other hand, begins the moment you face it. Even if you are afraid. Even if you are weak, because the act of naming the truth already puts you one step ahead of the problem. Here is the cruel trick. Avoidance feels like comfort. You push the problem to the corner and distract yourself. You feel lighter for an hour, a day, a week. But every time you push it away, the weight grows. And one day it crashes down all at once. It is like termites in the foundation of a house. You do not see them. You tell yourself, the house looks fine. Then one day the walls collapse. Avoidance is living in a house full of termites. Think of your problems like fruit. The moment you see a bruise, you have two choices. Cut it out now or leave it. If you leave it, the rot spreads. Soon the whole fruit is ruined. Your life is the same. One unaddressed problem infects everything. That is why people wake up one day shocked that their marriage is broken, their health is gone, their career is dust. It was not sudden. It was rot ignored. So let me ask you, what is the problem you are avoiding right now? What sentence would you be terrified to write because you know once it is on paper you cannot hide anymore? That problem is already costing you. Every day you avoid it, you pay. In stress, in energy, in dignity, in time you will never get back. The cost of avoidance is always greater than the pain of clarity. Always. So here is the warning. If you refuse to name your problems, life will name them for you. If you refuse to write the truth, time will carve it into your body, your bank account, your relationships, your legacy. Avoidance is not safety. Avoidance is suicide in slow motion. And that is why in the next section, the final section, we turn to the call to action. Because knowing the danger is not enough. You must decide. You must act. You must become the person who faces clarity head-on and turns it into freedom. The cost of avoidance is death by 1,000 cuts. The reward of clarity is life by design. And the choice is in your hands. We have walked through the fog. We have seen the torch of clarity. We have cut problems into pieces with the blade of practice. We have stared into the abyss of avoidance and watched what it destroys. Now it comes down to this moment. The pen is in your hand. The page is in front of you. And the question is simple. Will you write? Do not underestimate this. Do not tell yourself you will do it tomorrow. Tomorrow is the graveyard of change. Tomorrow is how you bury your freedom. The choice is now. Write your problem, not as a story, not as an excuse, not as a vague feeling. Write it as a sentence that pierces through the fog. This is my enemy. This is my weight. This is what I must face. Because here is the truth. Once it is written, you can never go back to pretending you did not know. And that is terrifying. But that is also liberation. History has changed on the back of one sentence. Martin Luther nailed 95 sentences to a church door and cracked open an empire of faith. Abraham Lincoln wrote a few hundred words at Gettysburg and reshaped the soul of a nation. Nelson Mandela wrote letters from prison that lit a fire across South Africa. One sentence can be the spark that burns down illusion. One sentence can be the anchor that saves you from drowning. So why not your sentence? Why not tonight? See your life for what it is, a battlefield. The fog will not lift on its own. The enemy will not reveal itself. If you do not name it, it will strike from the dark. But if you pick up the pen, you step into the role of commander. You mark the enemy, you draw the map, you lead yourself out. No one will do it for you. Not your boss, not your spouse, not your government, not even your friends. This war is yours, and the pen is your sword. Some of you are hearing this and saying, "But I'm not strong enough." Let me break that illusion. Strength does not come before the act. Strength is forged by the act. You are not strong, and therefore you write. You write, and therefore you become strong. That is the order. That is the truth. Picture yourself in a dark forest. You have been walking in circles for years. Every tree looks the same. Every path fades into another. You are tired. You are hopeless. And then you pull a small torch from your pocket. You strike it. The flame rises. And suddenly, the forest does not change, but you do. Now you can see. Now you can walk. Now you can find the way out. The torch was always in your hand. You just had to light it. So here is your call. Tonight, before you sleep, write one problem. Not 10, not 20. 1. Write it in one clear sentence. Look at it. Feel the weight of it. And then ask, what is my first step? Do it. And you will feel something shift inside you. You will feel the fog thin. You will feel the chains loosen. Do not dismiss this as a trick. This is the foundation of freedom. Your life will not change because you watched another video. Your life will change because you picked up the pen, because you faced clarity, because you chose truth over illusion. That is the dividing line between the weak and the strong, between the lost and the free, between the life wasted in avoidance and the life built in power. The choice is here. The choice is now. So pick up the pen, write the sentence, and step into the life that is waiting for you on the other side of clarity. So here we are. You've seen the fog. You've seen the torch. You know the blade is already in your hand. The question now is simple. Will you use it? One sentence tonight could be the dividing line between the life you re-stuck in and the life you were meant to live. Not someday, not later, tonight. Because clarity isn't just an idea. It's the first step toward freedom. And freedom begins the moment you stop hiding and start writing. So don't let this video just be another piece of content you scroll past. Make it the turning point. Pick up the pen, write the problem, face it, and watch how your entire life begins to move. This is the moment that could change everything. Don't waste it.